Hello, class. Today we're going to kind of review a little bit over the disease of addiction. Some of the intro to addiction stuff that is part of your reading, I went ahead and drawn a little bit on my board. Uh, when I teach face-to-face classes, I draw a lot. And I've been trying to figure out how to translate what I do in the classroom to y'all, so I decided to keep using the board a little bit here. Anyhow, the intro, the readings, and as we look at addiction as a disease, we have to kind of look at it as on a continuum, and also that it is a biopsychosocial and spiritual disease, and that it is for it to be considered a disease, it has to have meet four criteria, which is that it's chronic, progressive, fatal, and symptomatic. And also that it has to have an organ, which is the brain, defect, which is the dopamine, the chemical reactions within your neurotransmitters in your brain, and the symptom, which is craving and obsession, which creates bad behavior. So, as we look at this continuum, we notice that most of us are born, except for some exceptions, are born abstinent, and then we go somewhere within that, and nowadays it seems like it's getting a lot younger, of the experimental stage, where the first time we've ever tried a beer or smoked a joint or any of those kind of things. We usually find that when I ask most addicts while I'm at work anecdotally, they say usually between the ages of 12 and 15 was the first time that they ever experimented with drugs or alcohol. And then we find that it moves on the continuum into abuse, which between abuse and dependence, there's a major difference. But when we find abuse is when they start getting in trouble with school, with the law, in their family, or in just relationships in general. And we usually find this in the mid-teen ages. This continuum could fit within anybody's life, but we find that it usually works within this time frame. Now, dependence and the difference back in DSM-4, before the DSM-5 had the spectrum, the difference between abuse and dependence was tolerance and withdrawal. Meaning that you needed more to get the same high. So if you've been drinking a 6-pack and got your high, and then all of a sudden you needed an 18-pack to get the same high that you got. That is tolerance. Your body needs more to get the same high. And withdrawal symptoms are that your body starts to need it if you don't put it in it, so then it'll start getting sick. Hence, hangovers and such. And then we move into addiction. Now, the difference between dependence and addiction is more within this this realm of how we see the brain readjust its dopamine splashes and its hedonic set point, to where it moves into addiction. And I'll get into that in just a second. But as we get into addiction, we spiral down to what we call our bottom, or hitting bottom could be anywhere within this. And I like to add something onto this. I like to add this, but I don't see it as a linear continuum. I don't think that they have to go that way. I think that we still have recovery here. In AA and in the layman world of recovery, we say once you reach this point and you do not seek treatment, that jail, psych wards, or death are the three things that will happen to you if you do not seek treatment. And I see recovery as as a point where you reach these moments of clarity, and it could be anywhere within after you get into your addiction as you're spiraling down. It could happen right then. It's where you start to reach up for recovery. So I don't see it linearly, and maybe some of y'all could help me with your discussion questions on how you see this recovery work, because it's really a fascinating miracle that I like to study. Actually, my dissertations are going to be on these moments of clarity here. So, to review over within the continuum, we're born usually without anything in us, and it's biopsychosocial, spiritual. The bio piece is kind of how we look at for the genograms. We look for some kind of biological pattern. I don't think they have found a genetic marker yet, but research shows that we can see it transmitted throughout generations. Psycho, meaning maybe somebody um, finds relief with Adderall, with focusing, or meth, or any amphetamine, uh, in focusing, and then they become hooked on it. Social, we may fall into peer groups where it's socially acceptable, or we feel that we fit in within it, within somewhere within the spectrum, and peer pressure or peer recognition, and we become addicted. And spiritual is more of like an existential piece that we are looking for meaning, purpose, and maybe when we do our experimentation, we might find that purpose. We might find that we see the world. A lot of people will tell you the first time that they used, they have arrived, that they have, that they fit in, that they feel normal, that the world seems right. So we do see it as a biopsychosocial and spiritual disease. Okay. Okay, now getting into the brain section of this, how it changes from dependency to addiction. And if y'all remember Pleasure Unwoven in 2310, this is just a basic overview. I'm no neuroscientist or um, brainologist or whatever. This is just kind of an overview of how we see it. Like I said, we have to have an organ, which is the brain. So everybody has a brain. That, well, I hope so. But so everybody has the organ that can have the defect, which is the chemical balance in your brain, the dopamine. So this is the organ, defect, and the symptom, which is compulsion or craving, which causes bad behaviors. I like to just say bad behaviors. So this always just kind of blows doctors and psychiatrists and people around. Well, how can the symptoms be bad behaviors? Well, if you have enough craving and symptoms, you're going to do just about anything to get your drug or whatever it is that you're addicted to. So once again, the brain, the defect, and the behaviors. Now I've drawn this beautiful brain here, and this is our prefrontal lobe, which is the last part of our brain in evolution to develop. And what it does, what its function is it makes choices, decisions, it carries our morals, our values, our spiritual reasoning or way that we look at existentially at the world and our purposes and stuff like that. And now just think along the continuum, when we started experimenting, how old were we? Well, the prefrontal lobe usually doesn't finish developing until we're in our low 20s. I believe they say somewhere around 22, 23, up to 25. So when we put chemicals into our brain, we may already start retarding some of that kind of stuff there. This here is our midbrain, which is our reptile brain. It's our survival brain. It is the oldest part of our brain in evolution. Excuse me. And all it's concerned with is survival. It doesn't do any of this stuff over here. All it does is think. I don't even think it thinks. All it does is go 15 minutes ahead of time to know that we need to survive. And what we usually need to survive is food. We're wired to procreate, to carry on our species, and seek shelter and fight or flight. And these are all usually very pleasurable. And because our bodies are wired to avoid pain and to seek pleasure. So our midbrain looks for these pleasurable things that's made to where we keep doing them so we can survive. Okay, and this here is a dopamine neurotransmitter. Well, this is a transmitter and this is a receptor. And usually, and this here is our hedonic set point. So let's see here. Let me get some stuff drawn in there. I'll just undraw it real quick. Dirty, but we'll be okay. So whenever we have a normal pleasure in life, let's say catching a fish, we will have a dopamine spike to our hedonic set point, which is our normal pleasures, and our dopamine transmitter will transmit dopamine chemicals to its receptor, and this would be what we call a normal dopamine splash. Your midbrain will say, oh, that was okay, and your prefrontal cortex will say, man, maybe I want to go fishing again. You know, that felt pretty good. It wasn't painful. Um, let's say you're going fishing and you get a hook in there. You may not want to go fishing again. So that is kind of how these work together. You'll remember catching a fish, or let's say having a birthday cake. That was pleasurable. Let's say riding a roller coaster was really pleasurable. It goes a little bit above, and we'll get a couple more, but just enough to where this side, the receptor, will be able to receive your dopamine transmitting. Now, let's throw cocaine or meth into it. Here's a cocaine splash. Whoa. Put some of that, more of that in there. And the receptors go, man, I can't take that much anymore. You'll get a meth splash. Whoa. So you notice transmitter is transmitting a lot to where these guys can't catch them anymore. Well, every time that you do one of these splashes above, your midbrain's going, wow, we need to remember that. That was really pleasurable. You know, it gave us that much dopamine. And this causes what we call a hypermemory. It's a very poignant memory that the midbrain will remember. And it'll tell you that you need some more and that you like it. And so eventually these receivers can't catch it anymore. And all of our neurotransmitters of dopamine rewire themselves within the pleasure canal. The more and more that we do this, splashes, more and more we keep using these drugs because the midbrain's going, yeah, that's pleasurable. We're moving from dependence into addiction. So eventually you don't have the choice anymore. This connection between your midbrain and your prefrontal lobe, the stop gets broken, and all it says is go. And when it does that, your drug hijacks your midbrain and makes it think that it needs it more than food, sex, or shelter. You hear hundreds of stories of folks that would rather have their drug than to eat or to have sex or to seek shelter, or that they've made horrible choices in their lives. Basically, this prefrontal lobe just gets broke. They make horrible decisions. They've done things that they swore they would never do, and have not only done it once, but they've done it 100 times. And that they've broken all the values that they've learned as a child into the families, and they just, a lot of folks just say, I've just ran away from God or from my spiritual higher power. Um, Basically, this breaks. And this hedonic set point resets itself, where now normal pleasures in life are no longer pleasurable. The only thing that's pleasurable are those dopamine splashes. And so then that's when it hijacks up here, where we think we need the drug more than anything, but that is the one thing that we obsess about. So I think that's about all. Oh, whenever these first splashes come in and we set this hyper memory, that is why it's chronic. Is because we will always have that memory of that dopamine splash. And some people disagree that there's triggers, and some people don't. I don't really um, see it either way. I see it that we will always have this memory, and there may be some things. The memory is a wonderful thing, and it could be a curse. But um, we have euphoric recall where people only remember the pleasurable part, but don't remember landing in jail or wrecking the car. But we may have some internal triggers, some emotions, or external triggers, that smells or sights or old slippery places. You may drive by an old bar and all of a sudden you're just remembering the good stuff. You're remembering these dopamine splashes. At least that's what your memory is remembering. And that's where we see that we have to get into the recovery piece to ward off this, to be able to play it, the tape all the way through to broken relationships and to landing in jail, wrecking cars, losing family members, and all of that kind of stuff. So basically, this is just an overview of pleasure unwoven, basically, and the hedonic set point, once you find recovery or once you become abstinent, will reset itself back down to its normal. You will be able to experience normal pleasures. And within that, I think your neurotransmitters will regenerate within your brain. And eventually, these will go back because you're no longer putting the drug into your body, but you will always have a memory of these dopamine splashes. Okay, I think that's it for that. Let's go ahead and stop right there for a second.